It's got to sing belele, it's got to sing belele, shalele, shalele for my baby. Oh, what's wrong with that? You wanna shalele, shalele for my baby.
Welcome everyone to the call. We are very excited to have you all here. As you have all seen in the invites, this is a very beautiful conversation on how we can reimagine our education here in Africa. And we're very privileged to have John Hall on the call, a very great CTO here at ALU. Yes, the name of the song, I will just type it in the chat box, just responding to Abdallah. So we will start this conversation with an icebreaker. And so we just need to know where you guys are logging in from. And this is the passcode, and we're about to paste the link in the group. So if you have your phones, join using your devices at slido.com and use this link to use this code to join us. In the meantime, let me play some music, and I will wait for 2 minutes, and we will start. It's an icebreaker. Just interact, join us, and give us a chance.
It's never enough when you say you'll do better. You can save my life. I know before I get away, know that I won't slow down. Wanna get away, you and I, until we make it. Celebrate my love when you pin me down.
So we're about to start this.
Say you do too much.
Giving it 5 minutes.
One night together, yearning for my trust. I know before I get away, know that I won't slow down. Won't forget.
Oops. So if you have joined the link at Slido, our first question for you is, how energized are you feeling? How energized are you feeling on a scale of 1 to 5? Use the ratings on your phone so you can see how energized you are. Looks like we have some 3 here. What's been going on with the people who are typing with the 10% here?
I'm hoping by
Hopefully
the
at
end
the
of
end
this,
of our session, you will feel very energized. All right, our next question is, which country are you joining us from? Just let us know here. A lot of Nigerians on the call. This is amazing to see. South Africa, wow. Kenya, South Sudanese, Ghana. I can see the leading countries here, huh? East Africa and West Africa. I need to see Southern Africa rising now. Clearly, this is going to be an interesting one. Zimbabwe as well. Welcome from Zimbabwe. Where's my music at? Yes, keep populating that as we play the song. Mozambique, wow. Some Portuguese speaking people in
It's
the chat.
never enough when you say you do better. You can save my life. I know before I get away, know that I won't.
So our next question is going to be this one. As a child, what did you want to be when you wanted to? Curious to see this.
Celebrate my love when you pin me down. I can't get enough. Scream my thoughts out loud. Look inside me. Deep inside me.
Thanks everybody for participating in a very nice interactive icebreaker. It seems like everybody wanted to be a computer. Maybe the majority are winning today because of the session, but it is exciting to see that most of the people on the call wanted to be um, computer scientists. So without further ado, let's welcome John Hall to talk to us why we must revamp Africa's education system, and hopefully this computer scientist people who wanted to be computer scientists or who are now computer scientists are going to be following and probably relating to this. John Hall, welcome to the call.
Thank you so much, Anik, and thank you everybody for joining today. As Anik said, my name is John Hall. I'm the Chief Products and Technology Officer at African Leadership University, ALU. I'm thrilled to be here today. A couple things about me that you should know before we get started. One is I'm located in Rochester, New York, in the USA. For those of you not familiar with the city of Rochester, I am closer to Niagara Falls than I am to New York City. I just got back from a wonderful couple of weeks in Rwanda, visiting our campus there. I spend as much of my time as possible on the continent, visiting our campuses and elsewhere. So really excited to give this talk today. Other thing you should know about me is that I'm not, even despite my title as Chief Technology Officer, I'm not a techno-optimist. I don't believe that technology will automatically, on its own, solve all the world's problems. I think that's something that the humans must do, and perhaps they can use technology to energize their efforts and to strengthen their efforts. And that's you know, the sort of lens that I'm going to come at this from today. So as I'm thinking about, you know, must we revamp Africa's education systems through technology? The questions that I ask myself before we use technology to revamp or reinvent or disrupt anything, is there a need, is the first question. Is this something that actually needs to happen? Is question one. We'll look at that in this slide. And then we'll look at if we do disrupt or revamp this thing, do good things happen? Are there opportunities behind this? And we'll look at that more closely. And then the third thing I like to ask myself is, are we the right people to revamp or disrupt? Is ALU suited to do this? So those are the three questions I'm going to ask. Spoiler alert, I'm going to answer yes to all of those. I think there is a need. I think there's a giant opportunity, and I believe ALU's as a university, our students, our faculty, our staff, we're the right people to do this work, and I'm super excited about participating in that. So let's start by looking at, okay, is there a need to revamp Africa's education systems through technology? The answer is yes. First of all, because of demographics. As many of you probably are aware, by next year, Africa will have the largest workforce in the world, and by the end of the century, 40% of the world's population will be in Africa. At the same time, Africa is currently a very young continent. So the median age, half the people older than this age, half the people younger than this age, the median age is 19.7. That's very young, especially when you compare it to the median age in Europe is 42. In Japan, it's an unbelievable 48. So there's a growing and young population. At the same time, that population doesn't have access to tertiary university level education. A thing called gross tertiary education enrollment ratio, that's the percentage of all the people who are enrolled in education, how many of them are in post-secondary higher ed institutes. That in Africa, it's 9.4%. Rest of the world is 38%. So there's a gross lack of opportunity for higher education in Africa, at the same time that the demographic, the age of people who need education there's a huge number there. So that's the first reason. Demographics say we need to revamp the education system. Second thing that says we need to revamp the education system is the need for development. You've all heard this a million times. Per capita income in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, is $800 per year. In Canada, it's $43,000 per year. You know, we need to solve this problem, not only as a continent in Africa, but as a global community. This is a problem that has to be solved. But the flip side of this development thing is, if you look at what's happened in Africa in 2010, according to the World Bank, 6% of sub-Saharan Africans were daily internet users. Today, that number is over 30%. So there's been a huge uptick in the penetration of mobile technologies and internet technologies into the sub-Saharan African continent. So while there's a need, we're making progress at reaching folks across the continent. 30%, over 30% daily internet users. Of course, you compare that to the number in the US, which is 92%, and that further indicates the need for us to do something to address the development need, the access to technology need, and we'll talk more about how we're going to do that in a couple slides. But third thing for why we need to revamp Africa's education system is inequity. So if there's a number used by economists around the world called the Gini index, that measures the inequity in an economy or in a country or in a community. The Africa rates second highest in the world at wealth inequality. And if you look at the countries in Africa that have the highest wealth inequality, countries like South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, Nigeria, one of the patterns that you'll notice is that countries whose economies are built around the extractive economy, we'll talk more about that in a second, mining and oil, have high income inequality. We hope there's a better way of developing these economies that's more equal and distributes wealth more equally across those economies. But the inequity issue isn't just a financial inequity. It's also, if you look at education completion rates and compare male completion rates of secondary education to female completion rates, in sub-Saharan Africa, 46% of males complete secondary education, only 41% of females. That has a lasting impact in terms of wages and income inequity for across generations. So we need to revamp education systems to address inequity of income and opportunity. Last bit I want to focus on the need is, thinking about Africa's reliance on extractive economies. The UN released a report recently, and in typical massive understatement in the language in a UN report, this is what they say. They say, while extractive industries generate jobs, they can have direct and indirect negative social impacts unless such effects are controlled for and have sometimes contributed to the displacement of populations, economic, social, and gender inequality, and even armed conflicts. You and I, everyone on this call knows that is a gross understatement, that the extractive economies have driven lots of population displacement, armed conflicts, gender inequality, and so forth. And there is established on this slide, there is a need to rethink how we develop in Africa that's going to benefit the populations in Africa. So I think we've established there is a need to revamp Africa's education system. Let's talk about the next question. Do good things happen if we reinvent Africa's education system? So yes, good things can happen. I'm going to focus on three of the huge, what I think are opportunities for Africa and sub-Saharan Africa in particular. First, entrepreneurship. Africa is already the world's leader in entrepreneurship. According to the African Development Bank, 22% of Africa's working age population are starting businesses today. And we know that entrepreneurship does a better job at creating wealth than multinational companies coming into the African space and doing business. The benefits from local businesses have positive impacts on local communities. They create more diverse economies and that recirculate and generate wealth on the continent. There's a huge opportunity, and we'll hear in a minute from a student who's embodies this at ALU. Second opportunity that I believe is in front of Africa is for software engineering. We've heard from multiple sources, software engineers are the most in-demand profession in the world. This comes from the OECD and other places as well. And my personal belief is that software engineering and technology in general is a better and more equitable way to grow an economy versus natural resource extraction. And I think Africa is particularly well positioned to do this because of the young population, the growing internet adoption that we saw, the abundance of renewable energy resources around the continent, and also not to understate this, but the cultural chronological alignment with potential customers, that is markets in Europe and North America, I think uniquely positions Africa to displace some of the current outsourcing and service-oriented economies that are out there in the world today. So software engineering is a giant opportunity. Third is sustainable. I mentioned the abundance of renewable energy. Africa, with a revamped educational system, has the opportunity to leapfrog traditional economies that rely on wired internet, wired services, that have this legacy infrastructure in place that those economies are dependent on. Africa can use sustainability to leapfrog those economies. There's a giant opportunity if we revamp education systems. So third question is, why is ALU uniquely positioned to do this work? I think if we could jump to the next slide, Anik, the answer to this is in the unique values and the structural affordances that ALU has built into our education model. First, I'll talk about what we call the leadership core. So leadership core is something that our students take in their first term of their ALU journey, and that they use the leadership core curriculum to develop the skills, the values, the mindset required to become ethical and entrepreneurial leaders. And I think this leadership core sets ALU students apart from their peers when it comes to the ability to operate in a global, virtual, distributed, high-tech economy. So first thing, we have leadership core. I think that positions us uniquely. We believe in missions, not majors. So our focus at ALU is on practical learning outcomes. We care more about what our students and graduates can do versus what they know. And that means that instead of going into an academic department and picking a major like you would in a traditional university, our students start with, what are you passionate about? Those things that our students are passionate about are mapped to what we've identified as the 14 grand challenges and great opportunities facing the continent of Africa. And they map those passions to an opportunity that's out there in the real world, and they construct their learning journey so that they attain the skills and competencies and knowledge that will help them address in a real way that challenge, that opportunity. So these missions, so our students pick missions, not majors. These missions include things like job creation, climate change, urbanization, healthcare, women's empowerment, infrastructure, and so on. Our students, of course, still earn a bachelor's degree in software engineering or entrepreneurial leadership, but the skills that they gain during that process are tailored to meet real world problems, that not only the real world problems facing Africa, but facing the entire planet. So we believe in missions, not majors. Third thing is, for us, self-directed and experiential learning is the best way for people today to learn. You think about in the old days, how did university work, right? I would pick a major, I would hopefully graduate with that major, and if I was lucky, I'd get a job in that major, and I'd expect to spend the next 40 years doing the thing that I learned about in university. That's not how it works anymore, because today's global economy is evolving too rapidly. Young people today will need to retool their skills, will need to learn more skills, new skills as they move through time. It's not a one and done higher ed experience. So we think the best way is to teach students how to learn through self-directed and experiential learning. That gives our students and graduates a leg up in the global economy because they're prepared for whatever comes next. Last thing that I think sets ALU apart is that we're focused on tech enabling our learning. So today's young people, as you all know well, are digital natives. Unlike, say, me, people of a certain age, students today expect tech-enabled learning. That's how they learn best. And in fact, that's why I'm here at ALU, to lead our organization's efforts to tech enable our student journey so that it becomes more meaningful to our students. But not only is it more meaningful because it meets their expectations, but it's also more scalable and more cost effective, and that will allow us to reach more students. So I hope I've painted the picture. There's a desperate need. There's a giant opportunity. ALU is the right organization to start working on the process of reinventing Africa's education systems. To reinforce that, I want to hear from one of our students and have a given talk about his technical and entrepreneurial skills and how he's applying them in the real world.
My name is Given Edward. I'm doing computer science here at African Leadership University. I'm from Tanzania, and I'm also a social entrepreneur focusing on education and how we can help students who don't have access to internet or textbooks or smartphones in Africa. I consider myself a social innovator because my work in innovation is focusing on solving social problems, and beyond that, it's solving them for the bigger number of people, in the sense of making sure that our solutions are affordable and our solutions impact young people. I have at least 3 ventures. One is Mtabe, which is a platform for students to learn, ask questions and get answers when they don't have access to internet or textbooks or smartphones. The other platform is MyElimu, which is a discussion platform. It's a mobile app and a website of which students can use to interact with other students. The other platform is called ShuleWiki, which is a platform we created after realizing that we need to make it easier for parents to find the right schools for their kids. When I started, I didn't start off wanting to get an award. And when I created it, then receiving a call from the UK saying that you have gotten an award from the Queen because of your work, it was motivation for me, that people do notice and are willing to support if you're actually taking action to help other people. It made me understand beyond the award, this was a responsibility that was bestowed upon me, because coming back to Tanzania, I received a lot of messages from young people saying how they're inspired by me, how they look forward to what I'm going to do next. When we started, we only had like 500 students on the first year, but after a year and a half, we had students from at least 10 countries in Africa, and a few from Europe use the platform to actually access what other students are discussing, and for us that was really brilliant. My future plans include innovating more for education, because it is my personal mission. And here at ALU, one of the things that we are taught is to pursue missions, not majors, because you can get to the end of your major, but if you have a mission, then that's the direction you want to take, that's where you want to solve. The advice that I have for young people is that you have what it takes. It's just that it's going to take everything that you have. And don't be afraid of challenges or failure, because failure is not the opposite of success, it's really just a part of it.
I love that video. One of the things, if you were watching closely, you notice that I believe Given is shown shaking the hand of the Queen of England. And if you're a prospective student for ALU, I just want to make it clear that we can't promise that you'll get to meet the Queen of England during your student journey at ALU, but we can tell you that it is possible for that to happen, because it has happened. So I hope I've gotten you excited about the possibilities around revamping Africa's education system using technology. But I want to be clear about some of the challenges that we have to overcome in order to do this, because there's some real challenges out there in the world, and we're thinking seriously about this challenge. The first is cost. Traditional education is too expensive to scale globally. But we believe at ALU that technology applied alongside human expertise, human engagement, human compassion can help us drive down the costs of excellent educational opportunities. And on the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about the specific tools and techniques that we're applying to drive down the costs to make education high quality, experiential, self-directed education more accessible to students in Africa. So that's one challenge that we're cognizant of. The other challenge, you're all too familiar with this challenge, is Africa doesn't have enough bandwidth. So I hear stories from employees and students. They've used up their monthly bandwidth quota. They need to buy more. They're burning through it faster than they want to. The reliability, the stability of the network isn't there. we need an environment where students can stream videos, where they can explore the world through their computers and mobile devices, and this is going to require bandwidth. Again, I'll talk in the next slide about how we're attempting at ALU to address part of this problem so that we can overcome this huge challenge. Third challenge, and maybe not the least of these challenges, is readiness across the continent. So not everyone out there believes that we should make education more accessible by applying technology. Some of the stakeholders in the traditional models of education aren't willing to support our efforts. And in order for us to be successful, we need secondary educators, tertiary educators, accrediting bodies, governments, parents, students, prospective students, funders, to get up to date on the need, the opportunity, and be aware of who's available and well positioned to address this. We need continental readiness in order to revamp Africa's education system. So those are some of the very real challenges. If we can jump to the next slide, I'll talk about some of the things that we're doing. And this, for those of you who are interested in technology and applying how we apply technology to solve real world problems, this slide might be the most interesting part of this presentation. Is first, I want to mention, I talked about the challenge of bandwidth, and I talked about sort of the part of higher education is human interaction and building those human networks. One of the things that we're doing as an organization is we are building hubs, so distributed centers of ubiquitous learning. We're building hubs around the continent and elsewhere, so that students will have a place to come to, a physical, secure place that has free Wi-Fi, stable, high bandwidth Wi-Fi, where students can come together, do their work in a environment that supports community engagement. So we have hubs today in Kampala, Kigali, and running one in Silicon Valley right now that's sponsored by the Carnegie Foundation. So we have ALU students in California right now at our Silicon Valley hub. And we plan to build more hubs across the continent, up to 40 over the next 5 years, so that our students will have a place where there is a learning community and where we solve some of the challenges related to bandwidth and accessibility. Next important thing that we use is a cloud platform as a service. And, this is, again, getting in a little bit into the technical weeds, but this is one of the tools that we use in revamping Africa's education system. So not only do the vendors that we partner with use platforms as a service, but the bespoke custom software that we're building to manage our self-directed learning environment is built on the AWS cloud. Advantages of the cloud platform as a service are that it scales well. So we can put data into multiple data centers. It's more accessible when it's closer to students. There's an AWS data center in South Africa. They're building more data centers around the globe as we speak. It's more accessible. It scales better. So as we have more students, we can add more computing resources to that cloud infrastructure so that it's more performant for our students. And it's cost effective. So there is substantial competition among the main platform as a service providers, AWS, DigitalOcean, Microsoft Azure, and that drives down costs so that we can build software to serve our students that lives in these data centers that is very cost effective for us to deliver. So we're focused on cloud platform as a service. Third methodology that we use that we think is really important to revamping education systems is, I say agile software development here, but really this could be expanded for agile development. So what agile means is a way of developing solutions, whether it's systems or software, that every 2 weeks or so releases a workable edition of that software or that service, and then listens, and we'll talk about this in a second in our user-centered design, listens to the voice of the customers and incrementally over time iterates and adds services to that platform so that it becomes more sophisticated, more complete, more responsive over time. Contrast this to the old model of software development where a business analyst would spend 6 months writing down 100-page document of all of the software requirements that business analysts would hand that to a software development team. They'd go into their cave and spend 6 to 9 months developing that software and then hand back working software. And then the software would be done and we go into bug fixes. Agile software development gives us the opportunity to discover and make our software that we develop more suited to the needs of our customers, and those customers are our students enrolled in our programs. So we use agile software development where our product managers sit inside ALU and we work with software developers in an iterative fashion to develop that software. We also believe in mobile first design. This is not a huge surprise to folks out there who probably spend 2/3 of their internet time on mobile devices and 1/3 on some other type of device. Our students engage in our software using their mobile devices, and we know that those mobile devices are heterogeneous, everything, you know, from Samsung handsets to iPhones to iPads. But in our design of our software, we think about mobile first. Last bit in our tools and methodologies is that we believe in user-centered design. So we start with the users, and you know, when we design something. So interestingly, we think of our software development in 2 phases. We have a design phase and a development phase. We work with visual designers to do the visual design of our software and perhaps some rapid prototyping. We put that rapid prototyping in front of actual users and watch them use the software, ask them probing open-ended questions about the software and get their feedback. It's one thing for me to think about how will our students use a self-directed learning platform, what features, what functions, what design elements are relevant to them. It's a totally different thing for those users, those students themselves, to tell us, here's how I use technology, here's how it fits into my life. We believe that ends up with a much more powerful solution, much more powerful tool for reinventing education systems in Africa. That's my presentation. As you can tell from my talk, this is something that I'm really excited about. I'd love to hear from you, questions, feedback that you have. Thank you so much for listening to my talk. Anik, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you very much, John Hall. We have some questions in the chat box. So the first question from Chika is, what does PaaS mean? Cloud PaaS.
Yeah. So that's platform as a service. So if you think about when you use like a learning management system, it's software as a service, SaaS. We are developing software as a service that our students will use, but it sits on a platform as a service. So what that means is ALU doesn't own any servers. We license access to the servers that live in the AWS cloud computing environment. And interestingly, over the last 10 years, AWS and Microsoft have invested substantially in building a whole set of services, everything from BI services to machine learning and AI services that sit on this platform as a service. We license it on a per use basis. And as I mentioned, that tends to be much more cost effective than us providing that platform in our own data center and managing those services. They manage the updates, the upkeep, the provisioning of those servers and services on our behalf, and it's much more scalable, cost effective, and secure.
Thanks again, John. What would you say the impact of embedding technology in our education has been so far? Even to the staff who are always interacting with students here at ALU?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the first impact, and this was related to the pandemic shutdowns, the first impact was that folks realized that we can work in a new way and that education can happen effectively in a new way. Now, we happen to believe at ALU that a pure online learning environment isn't the ideal way for transforming education systems through technology, but we do believe that we can use technology to extend the classroom beyond the time where students are together sitting in a physical classroom. So that's why we think it's really important in our model for students to come together on one of our campuses in the first term that they're a student at ALU and to have access to hubs thereafter, so that they can come together and have a shared experience, a shared educational experience. But the first learning was that it's possible to learn in a remote environment. The technology exists to do that today. And if we can augment that with other experiential based learning, self-directed learning, then we have something that we believe is really powerful.
Thank you, thank you. We have a question from Thomas. It says, how do you implement self-directed learning using technology at AAU?
Thomas, that's a great question. So there's you know, and first of all, I should say I'm not the expert in the academic design of these programs, but I can speak to it from an implementation perspective. So we have a process whereby I mentioned our missions, and that students choose a mission from one of the 14 grand challenges, great opportunities facing the continent. That attempt to address one of those challenges unfolds into a series of learning outcomes. In order to address climate change, I need to know about climate. I need to know about economics. I need to know about sustainability. And those learning skills unfold into how do I go about learning those things? And we can pre-curate. So if you want to know about sustainability, here's some courses you could look into. But our students will also have the opportunity, because we believe in self-directed learning, to go out into the world and say, hey, I want to learn about sustainability in Tanzania. So I'm going to do some specific research and design my own learning path that's focused on the geography that I'm in, that I care about, rural economies in Tanzania. And then I can submit that learning path to my coach. My coach will review it to make sure it meets the requirements for the learning objectives. And if so, then I consume that learning. I go through that learning path. I demonstrate my learning outcomes to the coach, to the academic, to meet the academic requirements. And I've moved on through my self-directed journey. That's the mechanics of how it works. We believe, you know, philosophically, that type of thinking is what's going to make our students excel in the real world. Because in the real world, no one comes to you and says, oh, you need to, here's the 9 courses you need to learn in order to be more productive at your job. Your boss is going to sit back, or, you know, your customers are going to depend on you to think open-endedly about, what do I need to do next to be more effective? And then for you to go out into the world and find those things that you need, find those skills and those tools to develop those skills that you need in order to be more effective in your personal life and professional life.
Thank you very much, John. We have another question on the chat box. Are there negative effects of technology in education that you can think of?
Yeah, great. That's a great question. And definitely something that we take seriously. The one that comes to mind, if you think about traditional online learning was me sitting in my bedroom in afternoons and evenings and reading and watching videos and doing all of this in isolation and answering quiz questions, going through the curriculum in a sort of rote manner. That's I think a definite risk of applying technology to education, but that's not what we want to do at ALU. We want to make sure that our students are engaged not only in rote learning outcomes, but in creative thinking, in community thinking, in self-directed and experiential experiences, so that they develop as a whole person and develop in a way that makes them more effective out in the real world. And so we do see there are definite risks to applying technology to education, but we're cognizant of those risks and are trying to address those in our program design.
Thank you.
And also,
Thank you.
if I can come back, you know, there's the other risks, are the obvious ones around privacy and security. And, you know, we take those very seriously in terms of our legal requirements, thinking about the privacy laws in Rwanda, Kenya, Mauritius, and elsewhere, adhering to making sure that our students benefit from secure systems, from private systems that respect their rights as individuals.
Yes, thank you, thank you. We have a last question on the chat from Danielle, who says, Does the learning through education extend to practical career-centered educations? I guess the question is, does learning through education extend to practical career-centered type of institution?
Absolutely. So the experiential learning that we believe in pervades all periods of our learning journey. And what that means is students in their curriculum think about and apply those learning to real world situations. So you saw Given starting businesses, being entrepreneurial, developing software that's used out in the real world. But we're also highly focused on making sure our students have internship opportunities. That includes interning on ALU's tech team, interning in the finance team, interning on the admissions team. So, and not only interning at ALU, but interning with real world partners, the ALU, so that our employees have hands-on experiential job skills that they've developed in the real world, that reinforce the curriculum that they're consuming while at ALU. We think those two things are very important and synergistic together, and result in better equipped graduates than focusing on just one or the other.
Thank you, thank you. I think now one last question for real. It's Thomas who's asking again, then how do you carry assessments throughout those learning experiences?
Yeah, so our students, again, in the self-directed learning model, have different ways of demonstrating that they've achieved the learning outcomes that map to their mission. And that can be everything. And again, I should put the caveat, I'm not the academic designer here, but that can be everything from writing a reflective essay to creating a paper, doing some research, starting a business, doing a Q&A interview with a coach. So our students have the opportunity to think about, how do I best demonstrate that I understand and I can do something about rural sustainability in Tanzania? How do I demonstrate that to my coaches so that they can be confident that I've achieved this learning objective? I'm sure there are some standard approaches that will emerge, but students have the opportunity to think about that creatively. What's the best way for me to show that I've achieved this learning outcome?
Thank you very much. This has been a very informative webinar. We have very appreciated your responses and the questions in the Q&A box. And we are on time. So thanks everybody for joining us on the call on this webinar. This has been really amazing. This is the end of our masterclass by John Hall. So see you guys in the next webinar. I play some exit music since we just finished the Q&A question.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.